Most people never see it because most people don't drive it. The Florida they experience runs airport to resort corridor to theme park gate to cruise port, all connected by a palm-lined highway that never breaks character. That's the whole trip for a lot of visitors. 20 minutes of scenery, repeated for a week, then a flight home. Drive 20 minutes past any of that and the state changes on you. The coast disappears first. Then the land flattens out until the horizon looks the same in every direction. The roads empty out, the billboards stop advertising theme parks and start advertising bait shops and church revivals, and somewhere in there the radio starts losing signal, hissing between two stations that are both too far away. And this isn't some detour you're taking for the novelty of it. This is most of the state by land area. The coastline gets the tourists, the cruise ships, the resort towers. The interior runs on something else completely: water control, land speculation, cattle, mining, heat. It's not a smaller version of the postcard Florida. It's a different operating system. So that's where we're headed. Cattle country first, land that's been grazed longer than Florida's been famous for anything. Then the aquifer, the spring-fed water system running underneath the entire peninsula, and the sinkholes that come from the same rock. Then the phosphate scars and the ghost towns nobody built historical markers for. After that, the Panhandle, which barely feels like the same state. And last, the Everglades, not as a park, but as a machine somebody built and still runs today. Here's the thread running through all of it. The Villages, the retirement city everybody's heard of by now, isn't an outlier. It's proof that this hidden inland Florida can grow big enough to swallow national headlines. And it's not the only thing out there doing that quietly. If you've lived here or spent your winters here for the last 20 years, some of this is already familiar. You've probably got a piece of it nobody's covered yet. Drop it in the comments, because this state is too big for one video and honestly too big for one channel. Fact 1, to get us moving. Florida's inland footprint dwarfs its coastline. The beaches get the postcards, the interior gets ignored, and it's most of the map. Florida runs cattle on close to 3.5 million acres, over 1.5 million head, spread across pasture that doesn't look like pasture to anybody expecting green rolling hills, because this is flat scrub land, palmetto, and / pine holding cattle that don't care how it photographs. And this predates the rest of the state's identity by centuries. Spanish cattle were on this land before there was a citrus industry to speak of, long before anybody built a theme park gate. There's a belt running through the middle of the state where this all still happens. Okeechobee, Osceola, Highlands, Hardy, counties most tourists couldn't find on a map if you handed them one. Ask somebody who spent a week in Orlando to point at Hardy County and watch them stall out. The reason cattle ended up here isn't complicated once you look at the land itself. This ground wasn't good for much else. Too flat for row crops in a lot of spots, too wet in the summer, too poor in nutrients for the kind of farming that made other states rich. But cattle breeds that tolerate heat and humidity, Brahman crosses especially, do fine on grass nobody else wanted. So the land grants went to ranchers, the ranchers ran cattle, and 300 years later, the same families are still doing it on the same ground. Somewhere off a 2-lane road in Osceola County right now, a rancher on horseback is moving cattle across land his family has worked since before Disney existed. No camera crew, no gate, no gift shop at the end of the drive. Just grass that's been grazed longer than most of this state has been famous for anything else, running on a clock that has nothing to do with check-in times or park hours. If you've ever been stuck behind a cattle truck on a 2-lane road in the middle of nowhere, wondering how that's still a thing in the same state as the theme parks, that's not a coincidence. That's the other Florida, running its own schedule right next to yours, and it was never planning to move out of the way. Underneath all that flat grazing land sits something even stranger. The same porous rock that lets rain vanish straight into the ground here is the reason water behaves the way it does everywhere else in this state, and that's where we're headed next. That porous rock has a name: karst limestone that's been dissolving under acidic rainwater for thousands of years, slow enough that you'd never see it happen, fast enough that entire caverns open up underneath the state like Swiss cheese nobody's checked the holes in. Florida sits on top of one of the thickest karst platforms in North America. That's not a footnote. That's the reason the state looks and behaves the way it does, above ground and below it. Dissolving limestone produces two things: springs and sinkholes. Same rock, same water, and depending on which direction that water's moving, you either get a swimming hole tourists drive hours to see, or you get a hole that swallows a driveway. Start with the springs, because they're the version everybody's actually seen. Wakulla Springs pushes out over 1 billion gallons of water on its strongest days. Water so clear you can watch a fish 40 feet down like it's sitting in a glass tank. Silver Springs and Rainbow Springs run tens of millions of gallons a day, every single day, without a pump or a machine in sight. That water's not appearing from nowhere. It's the aquifer, pressurized and rising to the surface. And for one brief moment, you're looking at a system that's usually invisible, sitting right there in the open, clear enough to photograph. Now flip it. Same aquifer, same limestone, except this time the rock dissolves faster than it can hold its own sealing up. And it doesn't announce itself first. Picture a family asleep in a Florida suburb. Nothing unusual about the house, nothing unusual about the night. Somewhere past midnight, there's a groaning sound, low, almost mechanical, the kind of noise a house isn't supposed to make. By morning, the corner of that house is gone. Not damaged. Gone, dropped straight down into a hole the width of a swimming pool that wasn't there the day before. That's not a rare event in this state. That's a Tuesday in the wrong zip code. This same aquifer that's swallowing bedrooms is also the thing keeping the whole state alive. Florida pulls most of its drinking water straight out of this limestone system. Cities, farms, golf courses, all of it drawing from the same underground reserve. And every new subdivision, every new well permit, every acre of pavement that stops rain from soaking back into the ground adds pressure to a system that was never built with growth projections in mind. The more Florida draws down, the more that ceiling gets tested. Here's the part that doesn't make it into any real estate brochure. Every retirement community, every golf course, every subdivision going up right now sits on top of that same dissolving ceiling. It's been eating away at itself for thousands of years, quietly, invisibly, no different under the 18th green than it is 2 counties over where somebody's living room just became a crater. The rock doesn't know the difference between a fairway and a bedroom. It's just a matter of which afternoon it decides to let go. So if your homeowner's insurance has climbed the last few years and nobody's given you a straight answer, why, part of that answer is sitting under your feet right now. If you're in Pasco, Hernando, or Hillsborough, drop your county in the comments. Somebody watching this already has a story about a sinkhole 3 streets over from where they live, and odds are they've been waiting for somebody to bring it up. There's an industry running under a lot of Florida that most residents drive past without ever clocking what it is. Phosphate. Central Florida, the stretch they call Bone Valley, produces the majority of the phosphate rock mined in this country, and that rock ends up in fertilizer spread across farmland all over the world. Polk County alone has had mining scars on it for more than a century. And the strange part is how invisible it stays. You can live 20 minutes from an active mine your whole life and never once see it, because the pits sit behind tree lines and fence rows, zoned industrial, kept off the route to anywhere a tourist would go. When a mine plays out, the company doesn't just walk away and leave a crater. The pit gets reclaimed, filled with water, graded around the edges, sometimes stocked with fish, and it turns into a lake. A real one, as far as anybody swimming in it can tell. Central Florida's got dozens of these, lakes with clean shorelines and bass in them, and nobody asking questions. And the water sitting in every one of them is filling a hole, a drag line dug, not one nature carved out on its own. Now, mining isn't the only thing that's left holes in this state. Florida's got a whole pattern of towns that got built on a bet and lost. Land boom hits, speculators draw up a town on paper, streets get named, lots get sold sight unseen to buyers up north who've never set foot on the property, and then the money dries up, or the mine plays out, or a hurricane flattens the whole plan in one afternoon. What's left is a name on an old map and not much else. Brewster's the clearest version of this. Company town, built around a phosphate mine, over 1,000 people living there at its peak, its own school, its own store, its own reason to exist, tied entirely to rock coming out of the ground nearby. Then the mine ran dry, and by 1962, Brewster stopped being a place people lived. Today, the smokestack's still out there, standing by itself in the woods. No houses around it anymore. No road signs pointing to it. Just brick, reaching up out of the palmetto, doing nothing for nobody, because the industry that built it moved on and never looked back. Here's the thing about Brewster, though. It's not a cautionary tale about Florida getting the bet wrong. It's just one side of a coin that lands both ways. Somebody drew up plans for a town on speculation, sold the dream before the infrastructure existed, and this time it collapsed. Somewhere else in the state, right now, that same exact bet paid off. And instead of a smokestack in the palmetto, you get gated entrances and golf carts and a national news story. The difference between a ghost town and a golf cart utopia isn't the instinct. It's just which one caught on before the money ran out. Pull up your own county right now, because odds are good there's an old phosphate scar or a packing house nobody uses anymore, or a land boom development that got platted and never built sitting within 5 miles of your house. If you know the name of it, put it in the comments before the next section even loads. Head north from here, and the state stops behaving like Florida altogether. Up here, the state stops acting like the Florida you just spent 4 sections learning about. This is the Panhandle, and it sits closer to Alabama and Georgia than it does to anything south of Orlando, culturally and on a map. People up here aren't confused about that. They'll tell you straight out. Look at the drive times and the whole thing snaps into focus. Pensacola to Miami runs somewhere around 8 hours, cutting straight down the length of the peninsula. Pensacola to Atlanta takes about 5. That's not a rounding error. That's a 3-hour gap that tells you exactly which direction this corner of the state actually leans. None of it runs on tourism up here either. The economy's built on Navy bases and Air Force installations, timber getting cut and hauled to paper mills, row crops and cattle, shrimp boats working the Gulf out of small harbors that never made it onto a vacation brochure. Take Highway 2, running along the top of the state near the Alabama line. Tourists never touch it. Freight trucks run it, timber trucks run it, Military convoys out of Eglin run it, and the people who live along it use it to get to work, not to get to a beach. Roll the window down up here and it doesn't smell like salt air. It smells like pine straw, and it looks the part too. Tall pine forests instead of palms. Red clay showing through where the topsoil's worn thin. Small white churches sitting alone at crossroads with nothing else around them. None of it matches the tropical version of this state that's been sold since the 1950s, and none of it's trying to. Ask somebody from Miami if the Panhandle counts as real Florida, and they'll say, no, not really. Too much pine, too much south, not enough of what they think the state's supposed to look like. Ask somebody from Pensacola the same question about Miami, and you'll get the exact same answer pointed the other direction. Too much concrete down there, they'll say. Too much Cuba and not enough south. Both of them are describing the same state on the same map, and both of them are convinced the other one's the imposter. Cross that state line heading north, and nobody up here is asking about Disney. They're asking whether deer season opens on time, whether the mill's running a full shift this month, whether the shrimp boat made it back to the dock before the front rolled through. Same flag on the license plate as the one on the car parked outside the resort 300 miles south. Completely different Florida underneath it. If you've ever told somebody out of state that you're from Florida and had to stop and explain, no, you don't live near a beach. You live near a paper mill, or a pecan farm, or a National Guard base, drop that story below. Half this comment section is about to turn into an argument over what actually counts as Florida. And honestly, that argument's been running since before any of us got here. Most people picture the Everglades as a park, something Florida set aside, roped off, left alone to be wild. What's actually down there is a machine, built with intent and still running on a schedule somebody writes every single day. Canals, levees, pump stations, and a handful of water management districts deciding where every gallon goes and when it gets there. Not on nature's timeline, on a spreadsheet. This didn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen recently. Drainage projects down there stretch back more than 100 years, carving through what used to be a slow sheet of water covering most of South Florida. Millions of acres, rerouted, diked, channeled off into canals running straight to the coast instead of soaking south the way they used to. Miami exists in its current shape because that water got moved. The farmland south of the lake exists because that water got moved. And the tap water for a big share of the people living down there traces straight back to a system built to control where water sits and where it doesn't. Picture a pump station the size of a warehouse, out somewhere most residents will never drive past. Gates groaning open on command, and a wall of water starts moving toward the ocean because somebody 100 miles away flipped a switch. That's not weather doing its own thing. That's infrastructure running on purpose every day, whether anybody's watching or not. So next time a water restriction notice shows up and you're wondering who actually decided you can't water your lawn on Tuesday, that decision started at a control structure you've never seen, run by a district most people down there couldn't even name. If you know yours, say it in the comments. And here's where it gets personal. Ask a family that's been on this land 3 generations, who's straining the water supply, and they'll point at the new subdivision going up where the orange grove used to be. Ask somebody who just moved down from Ohio last year, and they'll tell you the water problem started long before they got here, that they're just an easy person to blame. Both of them are drinking out of the same aquifer. Neither one's wrong about who's using more of it lately. This is the same instinct running through the villages, through every reclamation lake we already covered. Control the water first, build second. Drain a swamp enough times on a long enough timeline, and eventually what you get is a driveway. Water, land speculation, and heat That's what's actually shaping this state. Tourism just sits on top of it, the marketing layer nobody questions. The aquifer feeds the springs and cracks open the sinkholes. Drained wetlands turned into buildable land. Buildable land turned into boomtowns, some of which failed, some of which became the villages. Stand at a reclamation lake that used to be a phosphate pit, and the water under your feet runs through the same limestone plumbing feeding Wakulla Springs 200 miles north. The same plumbing swallowing a driveway in Pasco County that same week. One system, wearing different masks depending on where you're standing. Talk to somebody who's lived here 40 years and they'll tell you the state's being paved over, that every field they used to hunt on is a subdivision now, that the traffic and the water bills prove it. Talk to somebody who moved down 2 summers ago and they'll tell you the growth is exactly why they came: jobs and sunshine and no state income tax. Both of them are looking at the same bulldozer. They just can't agree on what it's building. The postcard is the surface. The machine is the state. Next time you're down here, drive 20 minutes off the tourist corridor and look at what's actually there. Then go look up your own county's history: phosphate, citrus, cattle, some land deal that never got built. Almost every inland county's got one. If you only know Florida from the coast, you don't know Florida. Picture that smokestack at Brewster, standing alone in the woods, still there, long after the postcard version moved on. So sit with this for a second. Is the Panhandle the real Florida, or is it Miami? Is this state getting better, or is it just getting paved over one subdivision at a time? There's a version of Florida in your own backyard that never made it onto a postcard, and it's been there the whole time, running on its own schedule, waiting for somebody to notice.